Hello. Making this short presentation for those of you who weren't able to attend our training on the language model ChatGPT. If you have any questions or you need any help with anything once we go through this, please feel free to contact me. All right. So, what we're going to be talking about today is ChatGPT, as we've already said. And here are the things we really want to focus on. What is this thing? What are the basics? What are some ways we can use it? And then what most people seem to be concerned about are some of those risks. So how do we mitigate some of those risks? And then what are some of the awesome ways that we can use it in education? We can use it in our classrooms, our students can use it. So we'll be looking at all of those today. First off, everyone's heard about ChatGPT. It's a language model that is a GPT, right? The GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. Generative means that it gives you text. This is probably why so many people are making a big deal of it. It's producing language, and language is really the only way we think. Right now, you're talking in your head using language, so the language you think in is the same thing that this is out, right? It's pre-trained, meaning that it's given a lot of data to train it on how to actually generate that text. And the transformer describes the type of AI model that it is. We'll be doing some architecture of some different things like neural nets in a future workshop. For today, it's for that transformer, that model that it uses. All right. So how does it work? All right. OpenAI trained ChatGPT first off on Bing. Bing, of course, is Microsoft's search engine. Microsoft dumped about $100 million into it, so that they used that data. They also used all the data from Wikipedia. I saw a podcast the other night where the man who invented Wikipedia was talking about some of the issues they're having with ChatGPT and attribution. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But so it was trained on all of this data, right? All of this language, pretty much everything on the internet and everything on Wikipedia, right? But where the real magic seems to happen are with the human labelers. You'll hear the idea of reinforcement learning from human feedback. They even say that RLHF acronym all the time. That means there are real people in the background. They're massaging the prompts, and we'll talk about prompts. That's what you put in, and then they're massaging the language that comes out. So let's say you put something in, and you didn't like it. You clicked it; it wasn't good. There's a person that sees that, and they fix it. Whether it was maybe something in syntax of the language itself, it might have been in the way that it was worded. It could even have been in the data that it grabbed or how it grabbed it. But there's people all over the world working on this thing, constantly tweaking it based on its use. And that brings us to this last piece. It actually is getting better and better every day based on us using it. Right now, if you get the free version, which is from OpenAI, you use what's called ChatGPT 3.5. Now, that model was trained on data up until December 2021. So every bit of data that it can give you, any answers, comes from that time or before that time. However, if you use ChatGPT 4, that now is live on the internet. Now, that's a paid model. I believe it's still $20 a month right now. But and it is worth it if you use it a lot. So that one can go out live on the internet. Bing has one built in right now. Google has one called Bard built in, and there are some other language models out there similar to it. Now, here's what everyone's screaming about. What are all the problems? Everybody's seeing all of the things that this could cause. It's sometimes it doesn't give us the right information. It's biased. People, you can use it to cheat. Students can use it to cheat on tests. And people definitely will use it to plagiarize. And then there are things like, what if you ask it how to do something that we would consider horrible? Will it answer? That's called a question of alignment, whether it's aligned with what ethics or values that we place in there. And we'll talk about that here in a few minutes. Let's look at each one of these. First, inaccuracies and delusions, right? I saw this in another presentation, and this was an interesting one. What's the world record for crossing the English Channel on foot? Well, when you hear that question, obviously you're going to say, well, wait a minute, that's a body of water. You can't cross it on foot. Well, this thing had an illusion or delusion, and it made it up. According to the Guinness Book of World Records, you could see it right there. So it does make things up. Um, we won't talk about that neural net that's in between. We don't really know why. We don't know what goes on between what we put in on the prompt and what comes out in the language on the other end. But probably because it's programmed to really please us and make us happy, it likes to fill in gaps. It doesn't like gaps there, but it does have these delusions. It is getting better the more time goes by. Now, cheating. How can students use this to cheat? They could just ask it, you know, um, how do you write this script? Or give me a Python script to do X. Or what's the answer to this question? Just like they would have done on Google. Students who will cheat are going to cheat. We always want to keep them from cheating. We want to, show them that everything that they're doing in class is to help them learn those objectives and really round them as a lifelong learner within their discipline and connect it to everything in their life. So cheating doesn't help, but people will still use it to do that. Now, let's talk about bias. Now, how many of us are not biased? Well, we're all biased, right? Just about. It's hard to see, or well, you can't see anything in an unbiased way. You're looking at it through your subjective point of view. But there's a lot of bias in this. When a programmer has bias, even if they don't know they do, even if they're trying to be as objective as possible, that bias is going to feed its way into the system. Again, this has to do with the alignment that I was talking about. Um, you've heard the scenarios. Let's say a Tesla, right? Okay, y'all know a Tesla car. So a Tesla's pulling up to or going to an intersection. Maybe it's going too fast. It can't stop. And in the intersection, you see a mother with a baby pushing her in a baby carriage. And then you see three or four elderly people on the left. You turn right, you kill the mother and the baby. You turn left, you kill the elderly people on the left. Which one do you program it to do? Well, see, now that's a big problem of alignment. We don't even know the answer to that. You might have seen the movie I, Robot at the right beginning. At the beginning of that, it was the same issue. So there are bias. There's also political bias in it. Um, when it first came out, if you asked it anything about like Elon Musk or Trump, it would say, we don't do hate speech. But the most recent one I saw, somebody asked, how is Biden a good president and how Trump is a good president, to see how it did. And it was much more measured and balanced than it was before. But just know that there's going to be bias going in. All right. Thing we all don't want to see, plagiarism, right? The academic felony. Well, again, if students are going to plagiarize, they're going to plagiarize. This might make it seem easier, but there are some ways to mitigate this. Um, copying and pasting, people who usually do that aren't the brightest, hence why they do it to start with. And I mean that literally, because you know what I'm talking about. Somebody will turn in a paper, you've got 12 point Times New Roman all the way through, and all of a sudden you've got this Chicago in a 14-point font just stuck in the middle somewhere. So there's that. There's also you're the student's teacher. You know your student's writing. You know your student. You read this and you go, there's no way. I mean, Einstein just jumped off the page. So all you have to do in most cases is go, okay, so what does this word mean? Right? If they don't know what it means, they didn't write it, or they shouldn't be using it. Or even a little bit deeper, ask them why they have this paragraph wherever it is. Why is this paragraph here? How does it function? How does it add to the overall, purpose of your paper? Um, in the WAC, the Writing Assistance Center, we are gearing up to help teachers combat this, whether it is sending them down early in the process to help get them started on something that they can take more ownership with, or whether it's curtailing this in the middle of the writing process or even towards the end. We're developing all kinds of strategies and tools to help us do this. If you aren't using it, please at least use Turnitin for all your papers, to submit it through there. That will take care of a lot of them. However, you do not want to trust that 100%. It says, sometimes it's 70%, sometimes it's 80% as far as accuracy of telling you whether something is AI generated or not. But at the very least, you want to be using that. And again, we're developing another tool that's going to help with that, and you'll learn more about that in the future. All right, harmful use. Write me a Python script that can crack this encryption. I mean, I did this at an open house. People were just asking. You can ask it things like this. It writes pretty good code. I mean, it won't do all the layers in the stack and put them together, but you can ask it to write you some code. It really saves a lot of time, especially if you know all the pieces. And it can help you write each piece, and then you can put it together. I imagine in the not too distant future, it will be able to put those pieces together. It might even be able to, build every layer in the stack, create a database, put it on a server, submit it to the Apple Store, App Store, and submit it to Google Play. You know that's coming. It's nowhere near there yet, but still, it does write pretty good code. This code, though, could be very harmful. What if somebody asked it, how do I take, household chemicals and create, something that would make a car explode? So there are those now. Um, OpenAI has done a pretty good job when you ask it things like that. It says, "Look, this is an AI model. We can, and it gives you a little script down there. But there are some things that it will tell you to do. So that's an issue we have to look for. But with all of those problems that we might see coming, with all of those issues, it has the power to help more than anything else. Just think about some of the technologies that have come on, and this is about like when the internet came into the conversation, right? There was no internet, and then all of a sudden there was. Just think about the power that gave you just to write a paper, much less a thesis or a dissertation, right? Um, and then think about when search engines, like when Google came out. So this is here. It's not going anywhere. Students are going to use it. We're going to use it. So we need to embrace it, and we need to drive the train instead of just sitting back and waiting for which direction somebody else drives it. So here, as you see on the screen, there's several things that we can use ChatGPT to help us with. Um, Content creation, content of all types, whether they are test questions, explanations, summaries, email. It will create all kinds of different versions of text. And what you see up there, I call this, and not I don't call it. Everybody calls it. It's prompt engineering, because you prompt ChatGPT into say, write me an email to my boss explaining why, and then you hit enter, and then you get an output. But you only get out what you put in. So being able to constantly narrow down and tweak your input, changing the way you ask the question, saying, oh, add a little bit more formality here. Take out the contractions. Maybe take it out of the first person point of view, put it in the third person point of view. So there are a lot of ways to do that. For example, you could say act as if a university professor who teaches undergraduate students and write a lesson for creating a SWOT analysis. All right, so this will put it on the level of a professor explaining that in that class. Write 20 multiple choice questions for the AutoCAD cert. Rewrite this for a graduate level. So you can say write this for somebody who is not familiar with technology. Write it for someone who is an expert in the field of spatial computing or cybersecurity. So it can really help you when you dial in those prompts. A future training we're going to do really soon is one on prompt engineering, and here you can just see all of the different things you could take into account. And what we'll do in this training is we'll all work on one specific prompt together to see what's happening, and we'll get everybody to bring something that they need to write, and we can kind of help with that just to show how this goes along. Also, tell your students too. Just about every company out there now is looking for a prompt engineer, so that's a good thing. All right, personalization, right? It is very, very creative. I had to put Shakespeare up here. Um, Write an English sonnet about how AI is going to take over the world. It writes some pretty decent poetry, believe it or not. I've written several things, right? It will write songs. At Comic Con, when we had it out showing people, we asked it to write a song in the rock genre about something, and it wrote title, verses, pre-courses, courses. It even wrote a bridge. It wrote the chord progression. I mean, it did a pretty decent job. Create a game to help students understand the blockchain. It will create all kinds of interesting games. I'd like to know both sides of whether to use iOS or an Android. For maybe I'm going to talk to somebody who's a first time smartphone buyer, or maybe I'm going to do a compare contrast essay. So you can personalize things to not just this general letter, but to even a specific person. If you've got a prompt that you've engineered to write a good acceptance letter, all you do is you type in a couple of those, specific names and things. You hit it, and it'll give you, a beautiful email on the other side. All right, now this is pretty awesome. Um, Students can get it to generate, and we can get it to generate, 15 multiple choice questions at the junior college level about how you create an iOS app. You could say, create 100 multiple choice question that would be on the Security Plus exam, right? When you do that, a student can enter in what they've answered. It will check their answers, show them what they got incorrect, and then it will explain to them while it got incorrect. This is personalized, you know, interactive learning, like in real time for anything. I mean, think about all the money we would have had to spend and have in the past buying systems to do this. Now it's just out there. So it really helps with studying, and it will help you. Maybe you only have 100 questions in your bank. Maybe you want 200. Maybe you want 500. Maybe you want to put them in different categories. It'll definitely help you do it. All right. Now, automation, things we do every day, whether I'm a teacher or driver or, a, a professor, all school things are coming to mind. You can really automate a lot of the tasks that you do. Summaries, man, this thing does a great job at summarizing. You could drop in 1,000-word piece of text and say summarize it in 150 words, summarize it in 50 words, and it does a good job. So it's a really good tool for saving time. With that, which could be for a million different reasons. Give me some FAQs about which GPU would be better for a neural network. It will generate the FAQs. It'll answer them. You can get it, as I mentioned before, dial in a specific type of email that you find yourself writing all the time. And as you work on your prompt, you're going to save that. So this will be that email prompt. You'll have a prompt for recommendations. You'll have a prompt for maybe a student gets this type of thing wrong on it, and you'll have a library that you've engineered all of your prompts, and you just pull it out when you need to do that. Again, plug things in so you can get it to automate your emails. It will proofread. Grammarly has this built in as well now, and Grammarly, if you don't know, it's a really good grammar proofreading piece of technology that's a plugin you can get with Chrome and some other things that works really well. All right, now there are a ton of plugins. I mean, look at these categories, and these are people who have built things on top of ChatGPT. There's things for education, marketing. I mean, copy. I mean, this thing writes great copy. There are other models out there, diffusion models to create images. I'm sure you've messed with some image creation AI out there too. There's some for programming, productivity, but there's something out there that you can use for this. So just go out there and search. Again, some of them use OpenAI's ChatGPT. Some of them are using other language models, and they kind of all work together. You really want to go with what they say, this larger language model, because there are only a few companies really in the world who have the compute power to really have everything just really doing what it needs to do and moving along. I mean, you got your Googles, OpenAI, Microsoft, Apple, and they're the ones coming out with these models. All right, now APIs and apps. You can, if you don't know what an API is, it's how you get an app to talk to another system or another app, kind of. So there are all kinds of ways to do that. As you see some of these apps up on the screen you might use all the time, you can integrate it in with your Expedia, Instacart. Wolfram Alpha is an amazing one. If you're not familiar with that, has a lot to do with mathematics, and it uses more computational language rather than just logical language. So it's very powerful when you're dealing with calculations and computations. And there are APIs and apps out there for just about everything you can think of. All right, our library has resources about ChatGPT now, as you can see right there, and it's even in our libguides. And APA has come up with a way to even cite this for students to be able to cite when they use this. Now, school is still out yet on exactly how we're going to do that, but there is a way for them to at least cite it. And again, I mentioned a little bit earlier when I talked about Wikipedia being part of the the data set that trained ChatGPT, that grounding was an issue for them. Um, Attributions. This thing has gone out and grabbed everything on the internet, and now it is moving it around to create language on the other side. Kind of exactly what we do. We have all of these words and all of this stuff, and we speak these sentences and paragraphs out. But as you know, in academia, um, attribution is the way it goes, right? The game we're in is you write a paper, you publish it, then somebody else cites your paper, and somebody else cites it, and then it gets cross-cited, and the more citations you get, the more attributions you get, the better off you are. I mean, that's kind of the game. And not just to mention that's good ethical practice with anything, but definitely academics. We want to always give credit for anything, somebody else worked hard to do. So this grounding problem is something that we're all going to be working on trying to get better in the future. Well, all right. That's basically what we went over. I hope I didn't go too fast or make it drag too much. But again, like I said before, if you do have any questions about anything, just getting started, or uh, wanting to kind of spread your wings and do something a little more advanced, just feel free to reach out and contact me.